Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is not the normal ad opening, I admit. This is a little thing. My cat Chance is currently in the hospital getting surgery to have his gallbladder stone removed. I'm currently trying to run a GoFundMe in order to help cover the cost of the surgery. Just with the apocalypse and with the baby on the way and everything else going on, I just don't have the available funds to cover it. And I'm asking for any help I possibly can. He has gone through the surgery and he is in recovery right now, which is fantastic. And I'm glad that he's going to be around for many more years to come. If you'd like to help out, you can just go to gofundme.com/MundaneChat. The link will be also in the video description. Thank you guys very much. I will talk to you later. Have a great day and peace out. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel, and I'm not surprised at this article. I'm not surprised that this particular lawsuit was tossed out. A few months ago, I did a report that an officer out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was trying to sue Black Lives Matter and its leaders like DeRay McKesson, or I should say co-founders like DeRay McKesson, as a result of a protest turned / half riot in the summer of 2016 after the shooting death of Alton Sterling by Baton Rouge Police Department. And that is, again, a high point of contention. Many people out there believe that Black Lives Matter should, as a whole, be dubbed a domestic terrorist group. Others think it should be compared to the KKK or Black Panther, so on and so forth. And it's hard to kind of lock down the definition of a particular movement like this. While I do feel that there is a lot there worth criticizing, especially when you look at individual chapters, going after the movement as a whole is something that was hard to do, and one that ultimately failed because I feel very similar to the George Zimmerman situation. They kind of overshot. They went for second-degree murder with George Zimmerman. They couldn't get that. They should have gone for like manslaughter, and they probably would have been able to get him on that charge. That's the whole point. Is sometimes when they try to sue certain things or go after certain things for certain reasons, they kind of overshoot and end up blowing their case. And that's pretty much what happened here. So it says that a federal judge said that Black Lives Matter is a social movement similar to the Civil Rights Movement or the Tea Party, and therefore cannot be sued. This according to the Baltimore Sun. The police officer anonymously sued Black Lives Matter and DeRay McKesson, a prominent Baltimore-based activist in the movement, after being injured by a rock that was thrown during a protest over a deadly police shooting in Baton Rouge last year. That would be the Alton Sterling situation. And again, this is where things do get a little bit kind of difficult. And the whole point of the officer's lawsuit, I think, was a showcase that Black Lives Matter does in fact promote or provoke violence with some of the rhetoric, right? Because they tend to operate from a position of anger. And I understand that. I understand the tenets of Black Lives Matter. It doesn't mean that they're above scrutiny, that they're above criticism, and then they're above being held accountable for the actions that take place. But as I said before, a lot of it boils down to the particular chapter versus the movement as a whole. Case in point, go look at anything involving Black Lives Matter Toronto. That should be probably labeled something more than what it is, or at least taken over by people who are rational in their discourse. But no, they're allowed to act with complete impunity in the Great White North, and nobody ever wants to challenge them directly. And that is a very telling situation of the movement as a whole. But again, it doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. It doesn't, and I'll totally admit that. And I have been critical of BLM in the past, and I will be critical of BLM in the future. But I am willing to, look at the chapter, look at it as a chapter by chapter basis. Now, this is coming from U.S. District Judge Brian Jackson, who dismissed the officer's suit and said that Black Lives Matter was not an entity capable of being sued, saying, although many entities have utilized the phrase Black Lives Matter in their titles or business designations, Black Lives Matter itself is not an entity of any sort. Which, again, is true. It's an idea. It's a movement. It's not a direct location, which is why you should probably look at it as a chapter-by-chapter situation. So whatever Baton Rouge's Black Lives Matter chapter would probably be more of the person you'd want to sue for the situation. Going after DeRay McKesson, it's as much as I don't like DeRay, and I don't like DeRay. I look at him and Al Sharpton as being very similar in nature, and to turn race baiting into a 6-figure a year salary, basically. is the way I look at it. And that's the whole thing. Like, going after him is hard to do. Like, you couldn't go after, Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton in the same vein. You know, they could be up there spouting their rhetoric, but unless they're calling for direct violence against one person or a group of people or so on and so forth, it doesn't violate free speech. It doesn't violate anything like that. So you can't really sue them for that, essentially. Now, the judge also said that the officer's claims showed McKesson solely engaged in protected speech during the July 9th, 2016 demonstration, which was in response to the fatal shooting of Alton Sterling, a black man, by a white Baton Rouge police officer. Alton Sterling, who, by the way, just to be fair here, because these tend to overlook certain details. Alton Sterling was a man who had two felonies on his record. He was 2 strikes. He had a gun on him. That would have given him a 3rd strike, which would have put him in jail for life, because Louisiana does in fact have 3 strikes and you're out ruling. I don't know if he knew that, but that is the fact of the situation. I don't agree with necessarily what happened. I looked at the video and I can't tell if he went for the gun or not, but who knows in many of these situations. It is it is a he said, she said situation, but video evidence is iffy on that one. That's one of the ones that I've kind of had issue with, but it was true that he did have a gun and he was a 2-strike felon. So there's that. It says here that it's clear that I did nothing wrong on that day and that the police were the only violent people in the streets, McKesson said. The movement began as a call to end violence, and that remains the same today. Yes, okay. This is where things get a bit tricky when you look at BLM. Is it a movement to end violence? I would probably argue yes. For all intents and purposes, it is. And you can't control people that are on the outskirts of what happens. But certain rhetoric can definitely rile up some people. Now, as a person who is a proponent of Gamergate, we've often been slandered in the media as being a sexist, hateful, misogynistic, bigoted movement to get women out of video games, which isn't true at all. There are people who are thinking that, absolutely, and we have no way to stop them from thinking that, and we have no way to control what they say, but the idea of Gamergate was ethics in video games journalism. And that's what it was at the beginning, and that's what it is still today. It maybe has kind of shifted here and there depending on who's talking about it, but that is the core tenet of Gamergate. And again, explaining that is hard to do from time to time because of the outside forces and the outside people that have come in and labeled it certain things. And as I said before, I get what BLM's about. I've been critical of BLM, but it should be looked at on a chapter by chapter basis versus a movement as a whole. I do, again, not think highly of DeRay McKesson at all. And you can see based on his own actions where he's been able to insert himself in this thing and turn it into a full-time career. I guess good on him for gaming the system. Bad on him for, I don't think, really enacting any bit of change. So the officer's attorney, Donna Grodner, didn't immediately respond. Grodner also filed a separate suit against Black Lives Matter and McKesson on behalf of a sheriff's deputy who was wounded by a gunman who shot and killed 3 other law enforcement officers in Baton Rouge in 2016. That suit, which is pending before the same federal judge, accuses Black Lives Matter and its 5 leaders of inciting violence that led to the deadly ambush. And that is a hard one to lock down. Okay, yes, that guy did kill a few cops, and I do believe he was definitely, I think that particular guy was a black nationalist. The guy in Dallas and the guy in Baton Rouge, they were, I think one was like a black nationalist and one was I forget the term. It doesn't even really matter. But again, no one from BLM, none of its leaders, none of its core people were out there saying, go and kill the cops. We've heard people say that at these rallies. And they've chanted, what do we want, dead cops when we want them now, while walking through the streets of New York. But again, that wasn't at that time. That wasn't directly related to this incident. So it's hard to kind of lock it down, or at least to kind of draw that connection. McKesson was among 200 protesters that were arrested after protests spread in response to Sterling's shooting death when he was obstructing a highway near Baton Rouge police headquarters. The local district attorney declined to prosecute around 100 protesters that were arrested on the same charge, including McKesson. Which that's the thing I have a bit of an issue with. Because at that moment in time, they were putting people's lives in jeopardy. They were putting motorists' lives in jeopardy. And we have seen situations, especially out of, I think, Minnesota, when there was an armed black man who was shot and killed by police officers. There was protests after that where they were literally pouring onto the highways and yelling out, get all the white people. And we heard this and we saw this. And it's one of those things where that never gets talked about in terms of mainstream media, which is why you have to go to more or less conservative punditry online to kind of get this side of the story. Unfortunately, it comes with a spin, as everything tends to do, but there are things like that have happened. And so, shutting down the protesters on the freeway is something that I absolutely agree with. It saves lives. It truly does. McKesson and other protesters have also sued the city of Baton Rouge and local law enforcement officers over the arrests, accusing police of using excessive force and violating their constitutional rights. The lawsuit dismissed on Thursday didn't directly accuse McKesson of throwing the rock, but claimed he incited the violence and was in charge of the protest that led to the officer receiving injuries to their jaw and teeth. And again, that's kind of a hard one to argue because he's a person there exercising his right to assemble. You know what I mean? His right to protest, his right to free speech. People look to him because he is a social leader in that regard. So it might be hard, unless he was the outright organizer of the event and he was out there doing everything, then I don't even know. But I will say, though, I do personally feel that DeRay was, in fact, arrested while wearing a Stay Woke t-shirt in order to get a photo op. That I absolutely believe, because he's that kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that would play that kind of game in order to further emotionally manipulate the situation and give himself kind of a half-martyr status, if you will. During a hearing in June, McKesson's attorney, Billy Gibbons, said that Black Lives Matter is not an organization since it doesn't have any bylaws, a governing body, or dues-paying members. This is a movement, and there isn't a person who's responsible for it, or the leader or the founder of it. Again, yes, on a chapter-by-chapter basis, there absolutely is. As a movement as a whole, you could argue that the people who ran with it and put it to a broad, across the board scale, and have gone and spoken on behalf of it in terms of, talking with other civil rights leaders like DeRay did, then you could argue, yes, he's one of the leaders, even though it's not a direct connection. There's no bylaws, if you will. It would make it hard to kind of go after him for that. But then again, if I do recall correctly, McKesson himself has kind of pulled back from BLM. I think he pulled back around the time when it started getting some negative press, and again showing you that he's pretty much in it just for himself. Grodner said that Black Lives Matter was an unincorporated association that can be held liable for her client's injuries, and that would be a hard one to argue. I don't think they're going to get anywhere on that one. But here's where things are getting a little bit more on the point of contention. This is the judge in both of those cases. I apologize for the poor quality of the image here, but it's what I can find online. So there are people out there right now that are claiming that this is bias, that you have a black U.S. judge that is, arguing against or in favor of Black Lives Matter against an officer who was injured who claimed BLM did it. So that, again, is something that's going to be at a point of contention. This guy is also handling the secondary case from the sheriff's deputy who is also suing BLM and DeRay McKesson for what happened as a result of them being involved. And you're going to basically see the same outcome. I think you're going to see a lot of the same stuff where you've got, this guy's going to rule as he feels that is the most fair. And people are going to look at the color of his skin and think that there's a level of biasness there. There might be, I have no idea, but based upon how BLM is created in that particular sense, based upon how it is operated, and it does go chapter to chapter to chapter, the lawsuits themselves, I don't think have much weight, and I don't think have much merit, and I don't think this guy is really going against the grain and standing, and backing that claim up. I really don't. I just don't. You may feel differently. That's entirely fine, but it is hard to label a specific, group as a whole for the actions of an individual. Again, if DeRay McKesson or whoever was running the Black Lives Matter protest at that time was up screaming, inciting violence against officers, then yes, the lawsuit would hold much more weight, but it doesn't. And as far as I know, they didn't. And that's why, well, they can't be sued, because in that essence, they didn't do anything. Hey guys, that wraps up this video. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do so below. I love to read your guys' input. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me in the YouTube algorithm. If you want to support the channel, there's the Amazon affiliate store, there's PayPal, there's Patreon, there's Bitcoin. And if you're bored and you want something else to watch, check out 3 Buck Theater up here. My name is Matt Jarbo. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a wonderful day. Peace out.